Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Shunavatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Tadyantastohya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatye Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 76. Panchame Masyanu Prapte Chitashwasho Nrpatmajaha Dhyayan Brahmapade Kena Tastostha Nurivachalaha. Synonyms: Panchame, in the fifth; Masi, in the month; Anuprapte, being situated; Jiva Swashaha, and still controlling the breathing; Narpa Atmajaha, the son of the king; Dhyayan, meditating; Brahma, the supreme personality of Godhead; Pad Ekena, with one leg; Tasthatu, stood; Sthanu, just like a column; Iva, like; Achalaha, without movement. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. By the fifth month, Maharaj Dhruva, the son of the king, had controlled his breathing so perfectly that he was able to stand on only one leg, just as a column stands without motion, and concentrate his mind fully on Param Brahman. Text 77. Sarvato mana akrashya pradibhutendriyashayam dhyayan bhagavato rupam nadrakshit kinchana param. Synonyms: Sarvata, in all respects; mana, mind; akarshaya, concentrating; hridi, in the heart; bhutendriya asham, resting place of the senses and objects of the senses; dhyayan, meditating; Bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead; Rupam, form; Na Adrakshit, did not see; Kinchana, anything; Aparam, else. Translation: He completely controlled his senses and their objects, and this way he fixed his mind, without diversion to anything else, upon the form of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport: The yogic principles of meditations are clearly explained here. One has to fix one's mind upon the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without diversion to any other objective. It is not that one can meditate or concentrate on an impersonal objective. To try to do so is simply a waste of time, for it is unnecessarily troublesome, as explained in Bhagavad Gita. Text 78. Adharam mahadadinam pradhana purusheshwaram brahmadharayamanasya trayo lokashtratam pire. Synonyms: Adharam, repose; Mahat, Adinam, of the material sum total known as Mahat Tattva; Pradhana, the chief; Purusheshwaram, master of all living entities; Brahma, the supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead; Dharanam, Dharayamanasya, having taken into the heart; Trayaha, the three planetary system; Lokaha, all the planets; Cha Kampire, began to tremble. Translation: When Dhruva Maharaj thus captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the refuge of the total material creation and who is the master of all living entities, the three worlds began to tremble. Purport: In this verse, the particular word Brahma is very significant. Brahma refers to one who not only is the greatest, but has the potency to expand to an unlimited extent. How was it possible for Dhruva Maharaj to capture Brahman within his heart? This question has been very nicely answered by Jiva Goswami. He says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of Brahman, for since he comprises everything material and spiritual, there cannot be anything greater than he. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Supreme Personality, Supreme Godhead says, I am the resting place of Brahman. Many persons, especially of Mayavadi philosophers, consider Brahman the biggest all-expanding substance. But according to this verse and other Vedic literature such as Bhagavad Gita, the resting place of Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as the resting place of the sunshine is the sun globe. Srila Jiva Goswami therefore says that since the transcendental form of the Lord is the seed of all greatness, he is the Supreme Brahman. Since the Supreme Brahman was situated in the heart of Dhruv Maharaj, he became heavier than the heaviest, and therefore everything trembled in all three worlds and in the spiritual world. The Mahat Tattva, or the sum total of the material creation, is to be understood to be the ultimate end of all universes, including all the living entities therein. Brahman is the resort of the Mahat Tattva, which includes all material and spiritual entities. It is described in this connection that the Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, is master of both Pradhana and Purusha. Pradhana means subtle matter, such as ether. Purusha means the spiritual spark living entities who are entangled in that subtle material existence. These may also be described as Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, being the controller of both the Prakritis, is thus the master of Pradhana and Purusha. In the Vedic hymns also, the Supreme Brahman is described as Anta Pravishta Sashta. This indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead is controlling everything and entering into everything. The Brahma Samhita 535 further confirms this. Andantara Stha Parmanu Chayantara Stham. He has entered not only the universes but even the atom. In Bhagavad Gita 10.42, Krishna also says, Vishtabhyam idam Kritsnam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead controls everything by entering into everything. By associating constantly with the Supreme Personality in his heart, Dhruva Maharaj naturally became equal to the greatest Brahman. By his association, and thus became the heaviest, and thus the entire universe trembled. In conclusion, a person who always concentrates on the transcendental form of Krishna within his heart can very easily strike the whole world with wonder at his activities. This is the perfection of yoga performance, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 647, Yoginam api sarvesham. Of all the yogis, the bhakti yogi who thinks of Krishna always within his heart and engages in his loving transcendental service is the topmost. Ordinary yogis can exhibit wonderful material activities known as Ashtasiddhi, 8 kind of yogic perfection, but a pure devotee of the Lord can surpass this perfection by performing activities which can make the whole universe tremble. End of purport. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I thank all the assembled devotees for giving me this opportunity to speak on these verses. I'm going to read from a lecture given by His Holiness Somapad Swami Maharaj. Please pardon me if I add my own interpretation to the summary. So Dhruva Maharaj's story is really popular for a number of reasons. Of course, it is a wonder how a little boy did this amazing sadhana. But also embedded within this pastime are many deep and profound understandings. So, as we know, Srimad Bhagavatam is a Purana and it is history which illustrates principles. But what is special about Srimad Bhagavatam is just like you can take a cotton ball and start removing strands, like sometimes we see kids doing that, playing with a cotton ball, and they try to remove every strand and see what remains. And they can keep doing that, and there will be hundreds of strands. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam has strands of truth uh, coming out of it. So, philosophically, this story is also illustrating a strand of truth, right? Which is what is the nature of absolute and how to approach it. You can hear this pastimes hundreds of times and not get bored because there is a potency, there is all attractiveness, there is Krishnaness within this Leela. And there is a special effectiveness of hearing this transcendence from this little boy who took complete shelter on the instructions of Narada Muni and became perfect. Now, what is the nature of controlling mind and senses for our Vaishnava devotees? What is the position of the highest truth? This is what we will try to understand in this summit. The distinction between Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan realization are all described within this Leela, right? And then in the verses that we just read, we can see there is mention of Mahat Tattva, living entities, what is the relation of Prakriti to Supreme, that is also mentioned. So, in one sense, they are all within the Supreme Lord, right? All the living entities come from Supreme Lord. In another sense, they are expanded everywhere. So Krishna is the resting place of senses and the sense objects also. So now, if we try to artificially withdraw the senses, right, it has a negative connotation. Like in yoga, there is one practice called pratyahara, where they say, just withdraw your senses from everything. Instead, the bhakti yogis engage their senses in Krishna's service, right? So yoga system comprises of several things such as yama, niyama, pranayama, pratyahara, then comes dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So what we see is the yogis, they try to find happiness in nothingness, right? And it is an illusion. So yoga system is to withdraw from the insubstantial and repose it in the supreme, right? What Dhruva Maharaj did, he withdrew his senses, he withdrew his external senses by withdrawing the internal senses and fixing the mind on supreme. So this is the principle of meditation. Not that you deny your senses by abnegation and by very strict physical sadhana. This is a Buddhist and impersonalist way. Finding happiness in nothingness. The destination is neither here nor there, neither spiritual nor material. It's called Viroja, Maharaj explains here. Then Mayavad philosophy is also the same thing. The other side of Virojaya is Brahmajyoti. So all these paths are very troublesome because you're trying to fix your mind on something that has no quality, no personality, right? Krishna should be our source of meditation. Here in verse 17, it is mentioned, Adharam Mahadadinam Pradhana Purusheshwaram. So Mahad Brahman is sum of total matter and spirit, right? So this debate always goes on whether matter comes from spirit or spirit comes from matter, right? So scientists, they do sometimes experiments, and we had our own great scientist and chemistry expert, His Holiness Swarup Damodar Maharaj, who was one of the Prabhupada's early disciples. So he collaborated with many scientists in trying to prove that everything comes from spirit. So scientists took some grains of rice and they put them in a deionized water. So they deionize the water by a chemical process where they take out all the minerals of it from the water, and these guys put some grains of rice to see what happens. And what they found, there was more magnesium and calcium in the rice before putting in the water. So they could not explain, when they took out all the calcium and magnesium from water, how the rice got more water. So they could not explain it. Similarly, we see that a tree, we can take an example of tree which produces fruits. So we can see that the tree has consciousness, it has spirit, so the matter is coming from that. So like this, scientists do different experiments, but we don't need to do that. We have all the absolute truth explained in our scriptures. And Krishna is the absolute truth, the source of everything. So Dhruva Maharaj was fixing his consciousness on the source of everything, right? He fixed his consciousness on Param Brahman, right? But what we are doing, are we able to do that? No. For those of us who are leading material life, our attention is not on source of everything. What our attention is, we want to enjoy, right? And the sense objects are arranged by the Supreme Lord, right? So there is a domino effect that material life, we are in the material life, our consciousness is covered. Now we want to enjoy. The sense objects are there, and this way we get more and more entangled. So if we want to come out of it, then we have to reverse this cycle, right? We don't have to follow this cycle. So by reversing this cycle, we need to stop the mood of enjoyment, sense enjoyment, right? We have to control our mind and focus it on Krishna, right? And controlling the mind is difficult, right? Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavatranam, right? And Lord also says that asamshaya mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grahyate. So he says, yes, it is very difficult, undoubtedly, to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So one of the essential duty of a teacher or a parent or anybody who is in position of responsibility is to teach detachment, right? So what does detachment mean? Does it mean we should close our eyes to everything we see, or we should close our ears and just turn away? No. Detachment means attachment to Krishna, to see things of enjoyment in relation to Krishna and use them in Krishna's service. And this is what Rupa Goswami's Yukta Vairagya principle is. It's not that we will not use things. It is to have the consciousness that everything is for pleasure of Krishna and I will use it in Krishna's service. And it's not just things, right? Even your time. So not wasting our time in mundane activities like just some chit-chatting or just internet browsing and all that. Instead, we should train ourselves to focus our senses in Krishna and use our time in service of Krishna. So this practice to bring mind and senses to Krishna is our meditation. Then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we know that he also taught how to dovetail our desires with Krishna's desire. But this is a starting point, right? For example, vegetarianism. The real reason we are vegetarian is we want to please Krishna. Being vegetarian is not the goal of our sadhana, right? We have to transition. So some people become very proud that we are vegetarian, so we are better than others. No, that's not true. We are vegetarian because Krishna likes it that way. If Krishna liked another way, then we will be that way. So similarly, we have to develop detachment from gadgets and different, distractions that come our way, sense enjoyment. And anything which takes away our attention from Krishna must be stopped. We have to engage ourselves in hearing, chanting, and then we'll find perfection. So Dhruva Maharaj was not feeling deprived when he was doing sadhana. It's not like he was feeling hungry and he was still trying to not eat. It's not like his mind was going somewhere else and he was just trying to bring it here. He was actually enjoying what he was doing, right? So, this is what the Dhyan Yoga is in the chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, that fixing the mind exclusively on Krishna. So in verse 77 here it's mentioned, Na adrakshit, did not see, kinchana, anything, aparam, else. So he did not see anything else. So before the stage of Samadhi is Dharana. So he had captured the Supreme Lord in his heart. How can you capture the Supreme? He is fully independent, right? But Dhruv Maharaj captured the seed or the source of Brahman, right? So, as a conditioned soul, the desires will be there in our heart, but we need to pivot them in Krishna's service. And we can't do it by force. Unless there is a loving exchange, this process is not going to be sustainable, right? I can force myself, I can, somebody can tie me, my hands and, put a blindfold in my eyes and force me to sit in one place. But is this going to be sustainable? No. So, test of great devotee is not that one can stand on one leg for a long time or do some very hard sadhana. This will be imitation and artificial. We have to, this does not help us. The true measure of a devotee's sadhana is how much of our consciousness is absorbed in Krishna. Our practice is very simple. We chant Hare Krishna, we see the deity form of Krishna, we hear about Krishna, we serve the devotees of Krishna. So these activities help us bring our consciousness to Krishna, and the effects of Maya become pale. So one can see Krishna's presence within our heart every day through our everyday experiences of our life, right? Through the super soul, through the devotees, and through the spiritual master. So with this, I would like to conclude. Sorry for going over the time. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa